welcome to the deep dive of Cruella De Vil in Disney Villainous, the strategy deep dives, and how we get into all this deep dive strategy with this character. We're going to cover the villain deck and the fate deck and take some chat FAQ here live on Twitch. So let's kind of talk about Cruella, because I know Cruella is a character that people have kind of divided opinions on it, on how kind of to play her. I'm going to talk to you folks about what I've been having a lot of success with. I've been winning games with her. I'm not saying she is the most broken character in the game and is incredibly powerful, but she definitely has. There's definitely a mechanism that you need to play with her that makes her a little different in how she plays. So let's kind of just do a quick walkthrough. So if you've never played with Cruella De Vil before at Villainous, essentially her gimmick is you need to capture puppies. So you have to start your turn with 99 captured puppies, and this is where your captured puppies will go. Now, the way puppies work is that there are particular cards that allow you to take puppies from the supply, which these are all by default face down. And then what happens is when you would reveal a puppy token, you'll take it like this, we'll flip it over, and you'll choose any one of them if you're playing in real life. And then if the particular effect says reveal and then play that token to a location, then you choose the location. This one says Hell Hall, and then you'll place it to that particular location like so. And then if it were ever to get removed, whether from the realm or from your capture supply, and get put back into the supply, it gets placed face up like this. So when you are allowed to choose this later, you can actually kind of pick and choose which ones you want this to go to from the get-go. It's really nice. Now, the way that this works with these puppy tokens is that I won't go through all of them, but there are 3 for each location. There are 2 copies of an 11 for each location, and then there is 1 copy of a 22 for each location. So there are a ton of puppy tokens that are going to be able to be spread throughout the entire realm. Now, you're not going to need to capture every single one of them. The values is going to make it so when it comes to you capturing and the opponent trying to counter your captures or attempting to capture, they're going to look at that and make that be the chunkier one. So, but yeah. So the thing with Karela that it makes her very stand-outish in all of Villainous is that she has a normal vanquish action. So, there's only 2 characters that have unique vanquish utilities that are a very big part of their game plan, which is Evil Queen and Ursula. Evil Queen has her poison gimmick with Take a Bite. Ursula has her contract gimmick. So Karela has the normal vanquish gimmick where you need to use an ally, where a hero is, and then vanquish. The problem, though, and this is what comes into play, if you'll notice, there are only 2 allies in her deck, Jasper and Horace. They are both not cheap either. They are 2 and 3, and we'll talk more about that power issue later with Karela. But she has an issue that she has a normal amount of heroes in her deck, and these guys will go away, and if they get put in your discard pile, they don't have necessarily easy means from the get-go to get them back out and try to keep them staying on the board, because not only are they used to vanquish, they're also used to, in Horace's case, find, in both their cases though, capture puppies. These are your main tools of capturing the puppies that get placed out. So let's just pretend these 2 puppy tokens get placed here. You'll have Jasper use the activate action, and then you'll capture the puppies like so. But if Jasper's not there, if Horace isn't there, there is only one other way to capture puppies, which is bought and paid for. But we'll dive a little bit deeper into what these cards do. So let's kind of quickly talk about one of my thoughts with Karela. So I normally tout with this game that the unique cards in all the characters' decks usually are the powerful cards. So unless a character specifically needs a card, so let's example Captain Hook. Captain Hook needs the map in order to unlock Hangman's Tree. So you absolutely need to get Hangman's Tree out. But in theory, you don't need to focus on trying to grab Smee or Mr. Starkey to try to win. With Cruella, besides the allies, you're going to want to have all these unique cards kind of at bay somewhere or ready to be used. Because they're all super useful and they all incredibly accelerate Karela's main game plan, which is to capture and assist with capturing puppies and also keeping the allies out in bay. So let's kind of talk. Let's first start with the allies. So Horus and Jasper. I'll zoom in on these suckers. So to cover them really fast, Horus is a 2-cost ally. He has 3 strength, and his effect is follows: either capture 1 puppy token at this location, or choose 1 puppy token from the supply and add it to the specified location when you activate him. So he does require an activate for that ability to be used. But he is 2 power, so he's kind of on the expensive side. Jasper, he has 3 power, 4 strength, and when you would activate him, you must spend 1 power, and then he captures 2 puppies at his location. So he's a lot stronger of a capture ability, but he can't find puppies, but he also must spend 1. While Horus, by default, is the cheaper one. He can't capture as much, but he is an engine that allows you to capture the puppies. So your first goal with Karela is to find these suckers and get them out. Now, having said that, though, you also want to, while these guys are trying to be fished out, you want to set up your board so that way you have puppies already out in some shape or fashion, as well as getting ready to start capturing the puppies and getting the tools ready to go. The problem, though, is that there's a lot of cards in the deck, and these 2 are only 2 cards in total. They are 2 unique cards, so fishing these guys out is kind of difficult. Now, luckily for us, we have this card called You Idiots, which is a 1 power cost effect where it allows you to find an ally in your deck or discard pile and put them into your hand, which is nice. So what I recommend is that starting turn 1, even turn 2, if you do not have any of these guys, really focus on trying to fish these guys out as fast as possible. If you get a You Idiots, use that card and fish them out. Most of these other cards, I would actually recommend discarding. There are a few exceptions to that. Number 1, Flashlight. So the gimmick behind Horus is that he can find the puppies with the activate rather than capture. Flashlight is the whole finding mechanic of Horus, so that's why it's only 1 power. If you get a flashlight and you don't get Horus, I would strongly recommend making sure you play at least one of the flashlights to start activating and putting puppies out on the board. Because one thing that we'll talk about is with Karela, getting the puppies out on the board is almost more as it is more important almost than capturing the puppies. Because the more puppies you have out on the board, the more options you'll have to be able to capture puppies and make it harder for your opponent to stop you. Now the thing is, once Horus is out in play, Flashlight won't be as necessary to keep, so you can discard these if they become into your hand. But Horus on his own, he will get the job done without Flashlight. But if he doesn't exist yet, go ahead and play Flashlight. Use the activate when you can to grab puppies. Here, Puppies is the same deal. It's essentially minus the activate. You can go fetch a puppy token from the supply over here, place it out. It's the same deal. It's just not an item where you can activate. So rather than the Flashlight being a persistent thing, this is a one-time effect ordeal. So don't discard this. Play this out. Obviously, You Idiots, you don't want to discard that. However, once you do get both these guys out, these become another particular situation, which we'll talk about. Everything else here, you can kind of chuck. Including, I know people are going to be like, what, the Fireplace Poker? Why? Yes, get rid of this card. Get the job done. I would only recommend maybe keeping this card if you can combo with it with Flashlight and you don't have Hero Puppies. Otherwise, you can probably go ahead and get rid of this and not feel too sorry. Everything else here, you can probably go ahead and discard. There will probably be certain circumstances when we talk about some of these cards where you might want to hold on to them, but when you're trying to find these guys, this is your number 1 priority. You will need to dig for them and try to get them out because you got to remember, not only are these guys the utility for you to actually capture puppies, they are also the only utility for you to actually defeat heroes that come out on the board. So you got to keep that in mind with this deck that you need these guys. And we'll talk about with even when you fake Karela, like those heroes could be devastating without even their passive effects. So get these suckers out. Now, players play this a little differently, how they like to do it. This is kind of how I like to place these guys out. I like to play them out to the corners. Usually kind of my go-to personally is to have Jasper at Ratcliffe House and then Horus at Hell Hall. The reason for this is that number 1, keep them at the corners is going to allow you to, if you need to, move them over if need be to get a hero or capture in some shape or form. Now, this is normally what I personally preference. You may swap these around based off of their positioning. or where the puppy tokens may land. So let's say, for example, more of the stronger puppy tokens get put at Hell Hall. You probably want to play Jasper over there instead of playing Horus, but vice versa, etc. Even if more puppy tokens get placed at the milk farm or the countryside by default, I would strongly probably not recommend moving Horus over there to one of those places when he's played. But Jasper, you might be tempted. I would strongly discourage trying to have these two be adjacent to each other because moving them over to take out heroes or to capture other puppies can kind of be a little slow. So that's not going to be super useful to you. So I would try to make sure that you corner them. I've also seen other players do this and have success when they're in the middle and then they can go outward. But I would try to really recommend not having them be at the same place or adjacent at a corner like this. That'll get you stuck for when heroes need to be vanquished because you'll find out that the two corner spots are probably Karela's best locations to go to. And you want to try to keep those clean as much as possible. So these two locations, if they get covered by a hero, it's not an incredibly big deal, but these two right here are a lot more valuable to her, and you want to keep those as clear as possible. So there you go. So that's my that's the idea with the allies. And then obviously activating, it's simple. Go over here or to here, use the activate action, use one of their abilities. When it comes to using you idiots, always fetch Horus out first. So that way, if you do draw flashlights, you can discard the flashlights. There are no cards in the Fate deck that will discard the ally specifically. So Horus himself will only be discarded if you use him to vanquish. So try to get him out first, then Jasper. If you do get Jasper before Horus by just luck of the draw, go ahead and play him to a corner because Jasper is a 4-strength ally, so you can use him to actually try to take out heroes if need be, which is good. He will take out any hero by default in the deck. So he's really strong in that regard. So keep that in mind. Don't feel like you need to waste time playing Jasper out and waiting. Go ahead and play him out as soon as possible. You want to keep that your card count in hand as conserved as possible. So yeah, these two are your main priority. Now, these 3 cards right here do not need to be your priority, but these cards definitely should be played when they are drawn. This card right here is a little bit more of a situational thing. So bought and paid for is capture a puppy token at Cruella De Vil's location. So when you move, let's say this was here, you can capture the puppy token using bought and paid for it. It's the only other way to capture puppies in the deck. Now, it is a 2-coster. It is the only other 2-coster besides Horus in the deck. This is also a card while you're trying to fetch out your allies that you can go ahead and discard. However, these two right here, do not discard them when they come in your hand. You want to play them out if possible. Now, I know what you're all probably thinking. There's this little fake card in here called Reckless Driving. And you're like, oh, those things are going to be targeted reckless driving and I'm going to lose them. Well, number one, there is a way to get them back out with a Devil Take It. So don't feel super bad. They're also only 1 power. So don't freak out incredibly. Now, on top of that, thing to keep in mind too, in the early game, think that if we don't have these allies out, and let's say you went ahead and played like the Roadster or maybe the Telephone. If let's say you get Reckless Driving and a hero, so let's say Captain. One thing you're going to learn is that Cruella De Vil's corner spots are incredibly powerful. And by just covering those up with the hero, regardless of what their ability may do, that is really strong. By having the item out, it actually will force your opponent to think about if they want to get rid of the Roadster or the Telephone, rather than play the hero and cover that action up. Because you could still use that action towards your ally, whether to move them over to capture some more puppies, or to use the activate action to capture puppies, or find stuff out. So that is super important. Yes, someone in the chat says positioning with Karela is very important. I 100% agree. Where you place your cards in Karela's realm is probably more important than any character in the game. Just because by literally placing the ally in the wrong spot will literally screw you over for the game, just for the fact that the move action only allows you to move adjacently. And that is a super rough time. So just be very cautious about how you play those allies out. Like I said, the corner is what I've had the most success when you play them initially. Obviously, you're going to probably end up wanting to move one over. But there's one way you can circumvent that, the Roadster. What the Roadster is that you play it to a location. Goes back to the positioning. When you play it to a location, you using the move action, you can move it to any location in the process, which is the only card in the game right now attached to that move action that allows you to do that. On top of that, let's say, for example, Jasper is over here. All right. But the problem is there's 2 puppy tokens at Hell Hall. You can use the Roadster and move it over so that way Jasper can actually capture those 2 tokens in the same swing. So let's say if you're at Hell Hall, move the Roadster over with those 2 tokens, activate, capture with Jasper. Really solid move. And then you can move the Roadster back to a location at another point in the game to be able to set up to capture more puppies and swing over. One thing that you'll find is that a horse can only capture 1 puppy, and Jasper is really the capturing monster. So using horse to actually capture, I wouldn't recommend until the end of the game when you're about to score that last puppy or 2. Well, the Roadster itself really should be trying to be going to locations where the puppies are stacked, and then moving them to Jasper's location so you could start capturing and doing giant combo swings with capturing, which I'll show off, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, Roadster is really nice. Telephone. Telephone is incredible. This suite right here is what you want to see on the board. Now, granted, Roadster is going to be in different locations, and Telephone doesn't really matter where it's played. But Telephone, when you take the activate action, you spend 1 power to take an ally from the discard pile and play them for free. It's really useful. So things that you will find to do is that you'll go to Ratcliffe House. If you have enough power, spend 2 or spend 1 to play a Telephone, vanquish with an ally, and then spend 1 to deactivate and play them back out immediately. It's very useful. And on top of that, too, just being able to activate and bring the ally back out when being able to, getting them out is already really difficult, is incredibly useful. So you really want to try to get Telephone out if you can and play it and make its ability useful. And the thing, too, is that once you start stacking more of the items out, like Roadster, Telephone, possibly a Fireplace Poker onto an ally, when they get reckless driving and they start seeing your board state, that is not going to mean so much to them anymore. That reckless driving, actually trying to block the actions themselves is going to be a lot more necessary than actually playing reckless driving to take care of a Telephone or a Roadster, which I found in certain games. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, these items, you need to play them. When you get them, play them. Don't discard them. I don't care where these guys are. You need to play them out. Like I said, part of this is a mind game against Reckless Driving 2 against a hero. Or even something like Twilight Bark, where it'll fetch a hero back out from the discard pile. Use it. Use it to your advantage so that way you can keep your board clean. There's 2 major weaknesses that Karela has. Money or power. And her top 2 locations, when they get covered, makes her very hard to work with. Let's talk about the money. One thing you'll notice in Karela's realm, she does not have a 2 power spot. She is the only character in the game that does not have a 2 power gain spot. I believe that was by design, by the fact that everything in her deck is either 0 or 1 minus Devil Take It, Jasper, and Horus. So technically power isn't necessary, but by removing that 1 power, it actually makes her very power starved. She has an issue gaining power from the get-go, because one thing we'll talk about, the Countryside is your typical 3 gain power spot, but it has the move action. It doesn't have discard. By it not having discard, you won't actually want to go to it because you want to fish out those cards in your hand to try to grab your allies and your necessary cards. By going here and gaining 3, you're just going here to gain power supply and probably won't be able to play anything of use unless you have like a copy of Here Puppies and a flashlight ready to go. Or maybe if you have a flashlight play, Get the Job Done, something like that. It's kind of difficult to play around the Countryside, especially in the early game when you're trying to set up. So one thing I recommend with the power issue is try to make sure, like I said, only be playing cards when you feel necessary. Stuff like Flashlight, stuff like Here Puppies. If you get a hand of cards that you really shouldn't be playing, don't be holding on to those cards and don't spend the money to play a card. Because then you can use that power later to play out your more useful cards, and then you won't have to worry about trying to save as much money. Because you have to remember the fact that Jasper, regardless of, how many puppies he's going to capture, he has to spend 1 to activate. So that power also is applied to Jasper himself. So you need to keep that in mind with conserving power. Now, with that, there's this lovely little card called I Live for Furs. And there's 3 copies of them in the deck, which we'll also talk about with her deck. With this, you gain a power when you play it for every location that has at least one puppy token. So in this instance right here, if I played one, I can gain 4 power. So what's really nice about this is that is the frequency of once you start getting the puppies out in the I almost said domain. Marvel's getting to my brain. Um, what is it? When you start getting the puppy tokens out into the realm, this becomes a lot better of a card. By default, it's not great though. So if you don't have any puppy tokens, don't hold on to it. But once you at least get started getting 1 or 2 out, playing I Live for Furs is great. Don't feel like you need to hold on to it until you get 3 or 4 locations filled with puppies. You still that extra 2 power or even 1 power gain from I Live for Furs. Since it already costs 0, it's really useful to gain that extra cash and start zipping forward to getting more money on the table. Because this card right here and all these cards right here basically define Karela as an engine character. The interesting thing about Karela that makes her an interesting engine character is the fact that her engine requires only a few cards out in the realm to actually get the engine going. Other characters, like when we discussed Hades, have a ton of cards that where he needs to get out, and then all of his other cards in his deck start kind of really working together. A lot of these cards don't really start working together until things are in the realm, whether it's these allies, these particular items, or these puppy tokens. So her engine is very built off a very small group of cards, and then all this stuff right here kind of starts working into capturing the puppies, putting puppies out on the board, etc., etc. So, yeah, I Live for Furs is a great way to gain that power and start really making sure that you can start playing those cards when you need to. It's a very useful card, but don't feel like you need to hold on to it and wait when you don't have any puppies out to begin with. Once you start getting puppies out, though, I Live for Furs becomes very useful to use in those situations. Now, her other big weakness is the fact these 2 locations. Let's talk about that. Number 1, the Ratcliffe House has the Fate and the Activate at the top. Hell Hall has the Move and the Activate at the top. On top of that, if you want to also kind of count this into it all, Countryside, Move is at the top. All of the things that Karela really needs to use in order to capture and actually kind of work with what she needs to do to capture puppies are at the top. So, for example, let's just pretend that Captain is played. His ability allows him to move an ally to an adjacent location from his location. By me playing Captain here, immediately slows me down. Like, incredibly slows me down. Because by removing that Activate and that move card, or move action, I immediately cannot do those 2 things when I move to Hell Hall, which is a big, big, big problem. Very big problem for Karela. It's the same deal at the Ratcliffe House, where if I want to go over here, maybe take out another hero, play a card, activate to get more puppies out on the board, and then Fate, I lose 2 of those big options that Karela needs to kind of stay in the game. So this is another huge weakness. And on top of that, the Countryside too becomes a lot less utility focused, where you're only coming here to gain 3 power and playing an additional card. She does have some kind of cool combo turns that she wants to pull off towards the latter half of the game. So you really desperately need to make sure that you need to get rid of these heroes as fast as possible. Now, the Milk Farm is the one location I haven't talked about. I would strongly make sure that you still clean this up because it's a powerful Fate location, because you can play a card and Fate. There's not a lot of those in this game. This makes it super nice. However, the gain 1 power and the discard is also incredibly useful for Karela because, like I said, she is kind of power starved, and if it's early game when you want to go over here and kind of be defensive, if you lose the ability to discard, that's a huge problem. So, yeah, you need to try to keep your board clear of heroes as much as you possibly can. Someone says in the chat, there was a lot of Hades vibes with this point. Yes. I would not say she's exactly like Hades, but they're definitely both engine characters. The real big difference is that Hades has a lot more cards that he needs to put out on the board to get other powerful cards in his deck to go. While here, in order to actually do anything with a lot of this stuff over here to make it useful, you need to have these major cards out on the board, and there's not a lot of them. There's other ways to kind of circumvent that with Flashlight and Here Puppies and stuff like that. And then there's also You Idiots, which is a much better version of Eye of the Fates, where you can directly get one of the cards you need. But these are the things that defeat heroes. These are also things that need to capture stuff. There's not a lot of ways to kind of recycle these guys back in cheaply. Um, so it's a very big thing. So now Karela has some tools to deal with these heroes when they come out, that are not, just, whatever, vanquishing. It was very much designed like this because some of the tools that she has, which we'll talk about, these two right here, allow her to kind of circumvent that. The Devil Woman is essentially the exact copy of Whirlpool minus the unlocked portion. Move a hero to any location. So in this instance, if we give the example, Captain is here, actually here. And you're like, really? I don't really want Captain there right now. Like, at this point in the game, he needs to go away so I can keep getting cards out of my hand because I don't have any of my useful cards. You can use Devil Woman, maybe move him here, and then be able to get more advantage out of this location. Gain the power, discard, and then still be able to fate in the process. So that's one use of it. Another use of it, too, is for, let's say, for example, in this situation, actually, a better situation. I'm going to fetch the card. Let's say that Perdita is played here. She is a 4 strength. Horus is a 3 strength, so he on his own cannot defeat Perdita. If you have Jasper over here, you can actually play Devil Woman, move Perdita over here, and then vanquish Perdita in the same swing. So that is another use of it too, to kind of put them in locations that you want to vanquish the heroes. Now, one thing I will say is that unlike Ursula's game plan, which we'll say for another deep dive, another week, Karela's only got 2 copies of Devil Woman. Ursula has a ton of cards that allow her to move heroes around. I would strongly not suggest a hero stack with Karela because, like I said, her vanquishing power isn't very strong. So as soon as you stack 2 heroes at the same location, wherever that may be, those heroes are not going to go away for a while. So you need to be very careful, and I strongly recommend really trying to circumvent that as much as you possibly can to get rid of those guys as fast as possible. And there's other ways. Speaking of, whatever it takes, it is essentially the same thing as I'll Fix Ya, minus the ability to perform both the actions. So, like I said, what makes her so good is the fact that she has a play card at the bottom of each one of her locations, which is really nice. So let's say Captain is covering up, a milk farm, and you desperately need to discard crap from your hand and gain a power. You can play whatever it takes, because you already knew you weren't going to probably play anything else from your hand. Play that, and then be able to still take the top 2 actions and then fate on the same turn. And that's for any of the other places as well. If you need to go over here and desperately need to activate, you could play that, activate, and still get some work going. Same deal over here. And it doesn't say that you can't fate. So if you do need to go to the Ratcliffe house to fate desperately on your turn because it got covered, you can use that as kind of an emergency button tool as well. These cards, I usually kind of discard at the beginning until a hero is out in play, and it also depends on where that hero is placed. Like I said, the majority of the time, the heroes are going to be placed at these places first, just because they're so powerful. And as soon as you block those, even if Horus or a Flashlight comes out in play, they're going to block the ability to put stuff out. It's really good when they block that stuff. So you want to get that out of your way as fast as possible. Yeah, basically trading a play card action for a top play action spot. And like I said, especially in the early game, that like playing a card won't be as useful unless it's like trying to get more puppies out on the board. If you don't have anything you want to play, then don't bother. Like, you don't need to be playing any cards, and then whatever it takes becomes a lot more valuable in those circumstances to take full, use of any of the actions at the top. So that's kind of her defense around those. Some other things. The Fireplace Poker is essentially a 1 power item where it increases the strength by 1. And when you add it, when that ally would defeat a hero, the Fireplace Poker would be discarded. So, yeah, keep that in mind. And the biggest thing with the poker, though, is that on this guy, it makes him 4 strength. So he immediately will now be able to take out people like Perdita and Pongo. These are also really decent cards to play out. However, I will say this. If you do not have the ability to play the poker and you draw it early before any of the allies are out and you're not going to be able to get one immediately, don't risk keeping these cards in hand. There are 2 of them, and like I said, you can grab them back later through a particular card, which we will talk about here in a second. So that's another good recycling card. I'm actually going to talk about a condition really fast when talking about this vanquishing and dealing with heroes. So devilish right here is when a player defeats a hero with a strength of 3 or more, you may play devilish to defeat a hero with a strength of 3 or less. What's really nice about devilish compared to other characters is the fact that there are only 2 heroes in the Fate deck that are 4 strength. Everyone else is 3 or less. On top of that, devilish right here, it cannot, like, there's no items in the deck that increase a hero's strength. So you will always be able to actually find a way to pop this. So I almost recommend with Karela, try to maybe fate and put a hero out that's going to actually meet that condition. So that way when you pull it and there's a hero of that meets the devilish's requirements to defeat with its other half, you can actually use that. I was actually playing a game today, and I had 2 devilishes in hand. And then there were 2 allies out on the board that were 3 or less, and I was able to pop both of them to defeat both of them. It's a pretty big swing to defeat both of those heroes and not have to worry about using any of the allies or the poker. It's really nice to use devilish that way. So I would strongly try to take advantage of that if at all possible. So let's talk about some more cards. Let's talk about Devil Take It. Devil Take It is really useful. It's the only recycling tool that is, well, a little bit. We'll talk about you idiots more in a second. Devil Take It allows you to grab back an effect or an item and basically reuse it. One thing that's really weird about Karela's deck is that besides the unique items, which are Jasper, Roadster, Telephone, Horus, and Bought and Paid For, everything else in here is 2 copies, except for I Live for Furs, which is 3, which makes her really odd because her game plan is very specific. It's very odd. Someone in the chat says, you pop both for 1 opposing vanquish? Yes, you can. You can pop both of them and do it twice. It was all in the same go. So as long as they meet that requirement and you have both in hand, you can play both of them at the same time. That's how all conditions work. So if you have multiple of the same one in your hand, you can pop both of them as long as you can complete them. So Devil Take It allows you to basically grab back those items. So like I said, if Reckless Driving gets rid of a Telephone or a Roadster, you can fetch it back that way. If you're really desperate and need to get more puppies out, here Puppies is also really good to grab. If you're really getting down to the bottom of the deck and you already used the You Idiots and you can't find the other one, it's also kind of nice. Get the Job Done. That's the one I want to talk about. Devil Take It with Get the Job Done is really good. That is incredibly useful. Where literally, if I was able to Devil Take It, grab Get the Job Done, I can activate basically in the same turn using that combo swing at the countryside. And then also if I was able just to fetch it, let's say if I went here or here, I can then go to one of these places and then play it, either combo it twice here or combo it twice here with the activate, or hell, even go over here and do it. You try to take advantage of Get the Job Done when you can and do combo swings with it to grab more puppies out. And Devil Take It in combination with that will be useful. It's also nice to grab back the poker with Devil Take It. One thing you need to keep in mind with Devil Take It is the fact that you are burning a card action while doing so. So really try to make sure that when you're playing cards with Karela, which I cannot stress enough, every time that you play a card, it is actually worth your while to do so. If you have no reason to be playing a card, don't be playing a card. Karela probably is the most of any other villain, probably more reliant on the actual actions of like discarding, gaining power, moving, and activating more than actually playing cards, which is kind of awkward. You probably at one point in your deck won't be playing a lot of these cards. You're going to actually be going to locations to actually take actions and set up for your ability to capture puppies. That's what you're going to be doing. You're not really going to be playing more cards. Like, you'll be playing cards to help set up that goal, but there's not going to be really a time where you're going to be like, all right, I need to play this card. It's going to allow me to play this card and then this card or whatnot. That's not how she really works. She's very much, I'm setting up and using all of the actual main actions at my location that aren't just playing cards. So you have to think a little differently in that regard. There will be times where you will move to locations and not want to play anything because it's just not the right time, or the cards that you have are just not worth playing. And that is okay. Don't ever feel like you need to do that. Save those card plays for things like, all right, I'm going here. There's a hero here. I have a power. Play the Fireplace Poker, Vanquish, and do stuff like that. You don't want to be burning things like, get the job done early, or maybe you idiots at the wrong time or spotted, stuff like that. You got to be careful about when you're playing your cards. Positioning and playing cards with her is super important. Let's see. Let's talk about this card. So, you idiots. I already talked about the first half of it. Now, let's talk about another thing with you idiots. So, let's say, for example, Jasper was used to vanquish something. The worst thing that you can do is set yourself up for playing you idiots again to grab Jasper back and put it into your hand, because here's the deal. You already spent 3 power to play Jasper. You then have to spend 1 power to get him back, and then spend the 3 power again. That is 7 power that Karela just cannot generate for her game plan. I mean, she can generate it, but she's going to blow it all in one go and then not have it. You really got to use you idiots to grab these guys from the deck if at all necessary. Do not try to use them to recycle them out unless it is a last resort. And I'm talking last resort stuff. Now, what's another useful thing about you idiots is that, like I said, there is a slight move problem where, like, if these get covered up or based off your positioning, if a hero turns up or there's a puppy location that you just can't move fast enough in time to kind of get that set up, you can play you idiots when you're at the location to move the ally to that location. So let's say for this example, Nanny is here. I'll play you idiots to move Jasper over, knowing that when I go here, I'll vanquish her and then use the activate with the telephone to get him back out. Stuff like that. There are some kind of useful twists and turns that you can use you idiots for. You won't find it often, but keep that in the back burner when you are like setting up and trying to capture puppies and defeat heroes, because that ability is often quite forgotten. And I've found it useful a few times in my games. You won't use it often, but keep it in your back pocket as a tool. Speaking of the recycling tool, you want to know something really busted that's kind of cool? Let's say I move to Hell Hall. I have, let's say Horace in hand. I already have the telephone out. I'll take the discard action, discard all the crap from my hand I don't want, including Horace. Activate the telephone, play Horace for 1 less. Do the same thing on Jasper. I have done this a few times, and let me tell you, it is a wonderful little trick that saves you a lot of money and a lot of time. Keep that in mind. Now, granted, you do need the telephone to do that, so don't feel like that's going to happen all the time. But if you get the option to do that in your game, do it. I have found it useful every single time that I've done it because it has saved me a lot of power. Because literally, you're playing both of these allies for technically 2 apiece with the telephone, but actually, it's probably more useful off of Jasper more than anything. But, even with Horace, for some reason, like if you are put in that situation and you want to gain power using, like, I live for furs and then grab Horace back in some shape or form, it might not be a horrible idea. So just be aware of that little trick that you can do with telephone, at least with Jasper. So it's kind of nice to do. All right. Here, Puppy is pretty self-explanatory. You're grabbing a puppy from the supply. This card is always useful. The only time this isn't useful is when you don't have, or really at the point where you don't need to be putting puppies out anymore. And then Spotted. Spotted is a little weird. It is a very odd card because it allows you to reveal tokens from the supply, 2 of them, but you can't actually place them at a location. So it makes it so it allows you to, when you want to actually place puppies to a location, you have more options to do so. However, I've never really found a useful tool for this card until the end game, when I'm really focused on trying to position the captured puppies into particular locations based off my allies. The early game, I haven't found this useful. The late game, though, I have definitely found this a lot more useful to better position where I want stuff. Because if you grab 2 tokens out that you're like, I definitely don't want those, I want to take a chance and grab more puppy tokens out, then the next turn when you put puppy tokens out, you could take that risk. So that's when I find Spotted useful. More than likely at not, though, you will probably discard this card. I find this card probably the weakest card in her deck for that reason, because basically its usefulness is probably towards the end game. So yeah. Now, one thing I haven't really been talking about. So like I've been talking about the cards and how to use them and how to use them effectively. One thing I haven't been mentioning at all with her game plan at all is actually capturing the puppies and how and putting them out and stuff. This is a very important thing that everyone needs to know. That some people have already figured this out, but I will scream this from the rooftops if I have to. Karela's Fate deck is a seesaw. It is a seesaw between two things: capturing puppies and making it so it's harder for you to put puppies out on the board. That's what it's trying to do. That's what the whole Fate deck is based off, those two things. Once you are able to get over the hump of playing a bunch of puppies out on the realm as much as possible, you've gotten over the hardest thing to do against Karela's Fate deck. At that point, the only cards that will stop you are cards that are going to halt you from capturing, as well as putting puppies that you captured back in the supply, which there's really not that many. There are more cards overall that deal with screwing with putting puppies out on the board than there is capturing. Because what will happen is that if you capture too early and you get something like Perdita or a Flew the Coop or a Twilight Bark that's going to put Perdita back out on the board, your activate was wasted, and then that actually gets put back. And if it's in the early game, so just for an example, just to set this up, let's say Jasper captured these two puppies. All right, so these got captured. Perdita gets played. That goes back out. Or a Flew the Coop gets played. So that gets played, that gets put back in the supply. That means the action that you just took to basically put the token out here got wasted. You want to use the activates as much as possible and your cards to put puppies out in the realm as much as possible. So that way, your Fate deck no longer can really counter the ability for you to place puppies out, and now it's trying to focus on countering your ability to capture. And like I said, at that point, your capturing is done by activations, which are over here. And when they're going to play heroes, they're going to play heroes to those locations, so that way you won't be able to capture. And if you're playing your allies to the corners, you'll be able to easily vanquish them. And if you get the engine running right, telephone will be working really well. You'll have Fireplace Pokers ready at the go. You might have Get the Job Dones to kind of take care of that, or whatever it takes to get that going. Put the puppies out first, and then worry about capturing. Still have Jasper out. Don't feel like actually, even though Jasper's only reliably focused on capturing, the fact that he's the 4 strength ally should make him your primary tool to go vanquish heroes if need be. I know he's expensive, but like I said, as long as you got telephone out, it's not really that big of a deal. You want to try to keep Horus out as much as you can, so that way you can keep putting puppies out on the board as much as possible. Because once you're here, Roadster's going to come in a huge play. That move action, like all of a sudden you're just going to start moving your allies to start capturing stuff at their sibling locations right here. It becomes a really easy piece of cake, and then the opponent is going to be frustrated because there's only 3 cards literally that can stop captured puppies, and then Pongo himself will actually halt your ability to actually, capture at that particular location. Everything else in here is kind of geared towards dealing with puppies and capturing, or setting up their captures and stuff like that. So that's kind of the deal. It says, at what point do you like to start turning the corner on that? Obviously, don't need all the puppies out, but you want more than 99. So the way that I would do it is that once you get probably at least maybe halfway sort of there towards your goal, so like maybe 55, 66 out there, you can start kind of thinking about capturing. I would still kind of recommend waiting until you just get a bunch of tokens out on the board and then start going for it, because if you can start feeding using Roadster or a move action with Jasper specifically, getting rid of those tokens and capturing them immediately, then you can start getting the engine moving, because you have to remember too, you'll have cards like Here Puppies that'll still allow you to put puppy tokens out on the board. And if you have Get the Job Done, you can do a thing where like you use Horus to put a token out, see where it goes, and then capture, and then know next turn you might go over here, do that, or play another Get the Job Done or whatnot to do that. Um, it's essentially once there's about 55, 66 worth of puppies out there, I usually go for it. I will say this though, I've had plenty of games where all the 22s are out and maybe there's like 111. You need to keep in mind that the Flu, the Coop, and Perdita target specifically a token. So when they capture that token, 22 is a lot of puppies that just went away from your goal. So I would try to make sure that there's probably more tokens out there. I would say if there's at least 5 or 6 total tokens in the realm, you can go ahead and start capturing, but then start working on both capturing and still placing tokens out. Because one thing I would strongly not rely on the 22s as much. Still, like if they're there, capture them. Don't not capture them. But you want these tokens. You want to capture these tokens. But at the same time, don't make it your sole focus. You know, if you have 2 of these here and Jasper can capture them and it's time to start capturing stuff, you need to capture. But I would make sure there's a ton of tokens out first, and not just in terms of value of the puppies, but actual tokens. So like 5 or 6 tokens, I think is usually the sweet spot where you can start capturing and start moving forward. Yeah. Again, though, Word Labradors can slow that down a lot, but there's 2 copies of Word Labradors in there. You got to keep that in mind. That is not a common thing that will occur. And the thing is, yeah, that will slow it down, but you need to keep in mind that if you're using Jasper as your capture machine, you know, like you don't want to spend 1 power and then get that taken away. You know, like you lost your puppy. I'd rather take a Word Labradors where I'm just using free activates to put them back out than do anything else. And the thing, too, is that you got to keep in mind that Word Labradors only targets 1 location to move 2 puppy tokens off. If you have the Roadster, or if you're placing puppy tokens off, let's say, for example, these 2 puppy tokens got put off, but this location's available. So I can move Jasper over here, or if I have the Roadster over here, I can use the Roadster and move the puppy tokens to Jasper and then still be able to capture. Now, I would still probably at that point, like in this situation, if there's only 3 tokens out, I would probably focus on putting the guys back out there. But I will also focus on trying to get it set up if you have the Roadster to pile all the tokens at 1 location. So that way, Word Labradors isn't as dastardly, as well as, you know, things like Anita and Roger aren't going to be as super effective because all those tokens are already going to exist there. Yeah. You want to keep presenting you want to keep presenting your win condition once you get there. Yeah. You want to make it because like at this point, like they're gonna want to fate you, but there's gonna be so much here, and you're gonna have so much options kind of built already that you're gonna be able to stop them. And that's usually what I've seen is that in momentum, she's kind of a momentum based character. I would say Scar is probably the most momentum based character in this game, where once she gets swinging, she doesn't stop. Like she can just keep crushing and moving forward. She's not necessarily slow. She just takes some building to get there. And then she could kind of start crushing her opponent and capturing puppies left and right. And even if they fate, they'll put a hero out somewhere and you'll be able to take it out instantly. She is a monster. Now, bought and paid for. Only play this card as like a killing card, or when like you're getting close to win condition, there's a 22, you move there, play bought and paid for, and capture it. I don't really find any other use for this card, even when you're getting to the point where you need to capture. So yeah, there you go. That is what I would say is the best strategy with Karela. Because like I said, these cards are important to some extent, but really the game plan of like getting the engine set up to capturing and putting the puppies out as much as possible and then going in for the kill and the capture. Yeah, so that's what I would do. So there you go. That is essentially Cruella De Vil in a nutshell. Put the puppy tokens out as much as possible. Start capturing them, about like 5 or 6 puppy tokens out there. Use these cards in an effective manner. You're not going to use them all the time. Get your allies out as fast as possible. And then, you know, try to make sure you got some money generation going on. You'll be good to go. So that is Karela. I've had much success with her with this strategy. She's not going to win every single game, but she definitely is a lot better than people give her credit for. So yeah, she only feels slow if you start off without being able to use enough activates early. I agree. Because one of the things you'll need to keep in mind is that she does have a special thing with Hell Hall having 5 actions. And you want to make sure that you at least want to take 4 of them. So if you are able to go here and take 4, even if it's not the move, you're still getting the most out of that location. But if you're going here to discard again, you're starting to lose your steam. Someone says, should I hold on to Cruel for a while? That's actually an interesting thing. I didn't actually talk about this card. Here's the deal with Cruel. Cruel is really good. It is probably one of the best conditions in the game because it actually directly helps towards Karela's like win condition inherently, because it puts puppy tokens out on the board without paying money or activating to do anything. The only thing that will counter this technically is Anita and Roger, but we'll talk more about that with the Fate deck. There's not a lot of characters that will actually trigger this up front. The characters I've seen it most trigger against: Jafar, Ursula, Scar, Gothel, Pete. Some cases Ratigan. Some cases Dr. Facilier. Some cases Captain Hook. Some cases Maleficent. Because the thing is, Cruel is only going to work when they move something. And if the opponent knows that you have Cruel and might be holding on to it, they will wait on that action. And it's going to force you to make a decision whether or not you're going to actually hold on to that card or discard it. That is something. And then, like, if you're going to keep that in hand, you're wasting a slot in your hand for better cards. So that's, yeah, you want to be a little careful holding on to Cruel. So I usually discard this. I'm at the point now that I only kind of hold on to it when I know the opponent is actually going to move something. So like with Mother Gothel's the perfect example. If you know she's going to move like the hairbrush or an ally on her next turn, you should go ahead and hold on to Cruel. But if you don't, for the fact that the person is not going to move there, so let's say with Scar's not going to move to the Pride Rock or the Gorge, don't bother. It's not worth your time holding on to the card because you can use this to maybe possibly get one of your allies or you idiots or one of your key items, something like that. I would not worry about Cruel too much. I actually find Devilish to be a much better card compared to Cruel, personally. Yeah, listen, you can force the Doctor and Yzma to move allies, but you can try and wait you out. Yeah, that's the thing, and that's a big thing with condition cards with this game, is that like it is a mind game thing. Like, is the opponent going to do that, knowing that you have that condition card in hand to do that? You don't want that to happen. That is very important. So, yeah, that is Karela. FAQ. Also, chat, I apologize. It seems Spectrum is trying to eat away at me right now. So I greatly apologize for that right now. But I hope you guys can still hear me. I don't think it's being super choppy right now, but hopefully it calms down a little bit. But yeah, throw up your FAQ right now. I'll answer some questions. Some of my other thoughts about Karela in the process. Drinking some water too. Doing all this talking, man. I was curious. Okay. Do you think the puppy token locations coming out at random makes Karela inconsistent? Maybe along the lines of Pete's goal. I don't think it makes her inconsistent. I think what it forces you to do is you have to, like, we talked about positioning earlier, where like the positioning of where you place allies and the roadster and everything is super important, and you need to be extra careful about, like, maybe your initial first Jasper play is here, and then you're gonna move him over to the Ratcliffe house to keep him at the corner. Like it's very like those puppy tokens essentially are trying to force the player to make a decision about where to place their allies to capture stuff. But the thing is, with the power of the roadster and then like having the move action, it kind of illuminates that a little bit. So I don't necessarily think the randomness factor of the puppy tokens makes her super inconsistent. I actually never have found her inconsistent when I've played her. It's more of just like, all right, how far are those allies down on the deck, and like how fast can I get puppy tokens out? And if one of those two gets slowed down, that's where she starts to lose. But once if she's able to overcome those hurdles, she can start moving again. Because the nice thing about her is that once you get the momentum going, she really doesn't stop. It's more about getting the momentum to get it started, and then she starts turning butter like it's none of her business. Yeah, finding the like honestly, the getting the allies is a bigger inconsistency than the puppy tokens. Just for the fact that that's the thing too. You all need to keep in mind. There are 2 of these in a 30 card deck. That is incredibly inconsistent. So like, and that's the thing too, is you also have to work with the fact that you need to also be placing puppy tokens out and making sure that you're managing your power and making sure you have the tools to find them and, you know, all that stuff. Like, that's also a bigger management point too, that you need to try to accomplish while you're trying to get the allies out. Because regardless, you're going to have to do that. But what about double hitter fates and 3 players? Surely that can be crippling. It could be. You know, I rarely admit a lot of these guys are meant for a lot more on a 1v1 style of play. They will still work for multiplayer sessions. I think one of Karela's biggest weaknesses is the fact that her Vanquish game is very weak. And it requires her specific allies to put out there. So even early game, if you put like even Pongo and Perdita out and you're putting them at like here, that's like super hard. It's rough. It's rough. If Horus flashlights and you idiots are all near the bottom, it is rough. Yes, it is absolutely. And sometimes there's that thing of just like, and that's one of the issues. Like, one of her other weaknesses, honestly, to me, is the fact that she has way too many. She has way too many styles of cards in her deck, because literally it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like 11 different styles of cards. While normally characters don't have that many, they usually have more uniques, and then they have a bunch of more, like 3 or 4 copies of particular cards. Scar comes to mind with me on that because he has like 3 copies of Whisper, 3 copies of Be Prepared, 4 copies of Long Live the King, 6 copies of like the normal straightforward Hungry Hyena. You know, like, he doesn't really have a lot of like lesser cards, and like the unique cards actually pop out more because they're more of like unique tools to help progress the game in a more powerful way. While here, these are like the necessary tools that you need almost to kind of get the engine going in a way. Yeah, Karela needs a little bit more preparedness for a goal, wouldn't you say? Yes. And something else I would say too for everybody listening is like, if you lose a Karela game and you don't have any puppy tokens captured, but you have a ton of puppy tokens out on the board ready to be captured, do not be frustrated. Because you've also, like, the thing is, like, yeah, you also need to capture, like, the goal is to capture 99 puppies, but just getting them out is also half of that goal in itself. So do not feel frustrated by that. If you get like a board state like this and you have no puppies captured, like, you're still in a really good situation. Her deck is lighter fate deck. Third of it is for half of her goal. Third of it is for the other half. And then the other third is just dealing with heroes. Yep. Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And like I said, because like I said, once you get over one of those hurdles with Karela, you're basically home free. There's nothing stopping you at that point. So nothing's going to stop you. All right, any more Karela questions? Any more Karela questions at all? You mentioned that you don't think it matters where the telephone goes. Given Nanny's ability, doesn't that mean it matters? For example, yeah, that's like the only time the telephone matters, Fluffy, is the fact that, like, you know, if the telephone is out and the player is really kind of focused on, like, oh, they seem to be recycling using the telephone a lot, I'll do that. That would be it. But honestly, that, like, the only time that would actually matter in terms of placement is doing that. You also could use the move action to move the telephone over to kind of circumvent that if you need to. So it's really not that bad. A lot of people forget the fact that even though Nanny makes the activates cost 1 more power, you can just move it off of her location if you're super dire. And the thing is, I see that you mentioned the thing about the Ratcliffe house. If you're going to be playing allies here, Nanny is probably more than likely going to go to a corner rather than she's going to go in the middle. So playing the telephone in the middle is kind of more of just like a placement preference thing for me. Because you got to think about it. If I place it like this, she's going to make it so both of these are going to get targeted. Now, granted, that's not as bad here because I'll probably just use Jasper and then activate and bring him back. But, like, If I was doing it with Horus, it'd be twice as worse, you know? Because Horus is actually going to do that. Wait, Annie affects the cards, not the mover? I thought it made the activate cost more, not specific cards at... It's at her location. So the cost to activate allies and items at this location is increased by 1 power. That is how it works. Yep. She is a specific targeting card. Yeah, the wording's not super special. But yeah, that is... I'd say it's pretty good explanation of the Fate deck, if I do say so myself, folks. I don't want to give myself too much credit. Or not the Fate deck, the Villain deck. All right. I say... Are we going to cover the Fate deck really fast? Her Fate deck is relatively straightforward. It's not brutal. It's sort of brutal in ways, but it's not like Scar levels of nastiness. I'll go ahead and start getting it set up. And I'll wait for more questions as we go about. Opinion, I think Jasper's too expensive. From a game design perspective, I understand why they made it a 3. I do think it's a little expensive. I think if it cost any more, it'd be stupid. I think if it costed less, though, I think you'd be surprised how much that would affect the game plan. Because honestly, like from a design point of view, like the reason why these are 1s and one of these isn't a 2 is because the fact that I think Hell Hall has the actions that it does, so it makes it powerful, and all the cards in her deck are 1s. In theory, the only card she needs more than 1 for is Horus and Jasper, and I definitely think it's intended for you to actually think about not playing cards sometimes at certain locations. So, and also, it's kind of been a consistent thing in this game that most of the characters that are 4 strength cost 3. There are a few exceptions to that. Like I know Trigger is a 2, but he makes it so all the allies cost 1 or 1 less strength at his location. So there's definitely like you can see some of the like from the design Bible of the game of like, all right, this is the way. Like if a ally's gonna be 4 strength, they need to cost 3. But let's talk about like what that requires them to do. And like even examples like technically Smee could be 4 strength, but he has to be placed at a particular location to do so. So by default, he's kind of a little bit more on the pricier side, but then he becomes cheaper if he's played to the right location. So it's like Kronk being 6 for 3 is so crazy. Yeah, but you also got to circumvent the fact that like Kronk is one of only 4 allies in her deck. Of Yzma's deck, so. As a secret lawyer, man, I see what you're saying, and I'm being very honest. If people are fate barraging a Karela, you know, when there's no puppies out on the board, I'm just gonna be honest, they're just being an asshole. I mean, like, I could get maybe fading twice in a row, but after that, no. Like, after that, people are just being jerks to be jerks. I feel bad. I hope that doesn't happen to you very often, because this also goes with the 3-player stuff too. Is like Fate needs to like I talk about like fading every other turn, but also like when you're playing a 3-player game, like spread the love around so everyone gets halted a little bit, because as soon as someone doesn't get faded very often, they're gonna start pulling ahead. Oh no, I mean once the engine is built and the puppies are out, no, honestly, still like. Because you still got to keep in mind that, like, all right, am I going to use a reckless driving over a hero to block actions or sacrifice one of these items? You know, and you have to keep in mind, too, that item thing also Fireplace Poker. So that's also one of the things it can target. So you got to keep that in mind. Like, there's a lot of different things that it can target. And then, like, they have to make that decision of, do I want to get rid of the Roadster? Or do I want to play hero and block actions? It's just, there's a lot of decision making that has to be made there, and I think you got to keep that in mind. Is like you want to force your opponent with any Fate deck to start making decisions. Like that is super important. Super important. As the Popo are outside my apartment complex. All right, let's talk about the Fate deck. So we kind of already discussed, we talked about this a little bit when we were covering the villain deck, but the Fate deck is kind of, segmented into, I would say, like a seesaw, where there's basically kind of half of it going towards halting your ability to place puppies out into the realm, and the other half of it halting your ability to capture or take back captures. The nice thing about the take back of captures, there's only 3 of those cards. 2 copies of Flew the Coop and Perdita. So there's not that many. There are actually probably more cards that deal with halting your ability to, put puppies out on the board with, Roger or Labradors, Nanny a little bit to some extent, and then Twilight Bark to fish those heroes back out and have their effects persist. And then there's ones that are kind of an in-between. Sergeant Tibs can kind of be a little disruptive, especially when you're doing stuff like Roadster, moving stuff around. You might have stuff set up where Jasper's about to capture. Tibs will draw those things away. Captain also kind of does the same thing where he can disrupt and move your ally over so he can stop a Vanquish. He can stop the ability to capture puppies. If he wants to combo into like Nanny, Nanny's also kind of the same boat where she she halts the ability to find and capture puppies by making it activates cost more at those locations. There's a few middle of the roaders, but a lot of it's half and half. But the biggest thing to take away from Karela's Fate deck is the fact that these cards, on their own, blocking the actions is incredibly useful. Play those cards to block those particular spots. Block those, doesn't matter where these are. I probably would target Hell Hall over this one first, because in the early game, unless they're really gearing up to set up for a kill, they're probably not going to go here early. They're probably going to go to Hell Hall more often, because you also got to keep in mind that unlike the Ratcliffe House early game, they need to discard crap, and they're going to probably want to gain money. So covering this location and hindering their ability to play a card and then try to activate to find puppies and such, you want to get rid of that ability if possible. Then go for the Ratcliffe House, and then you can kind of fill shop in between. Now, Anita and Roger in particular, I would try. So their unique ability allows it so when a puppy token we place to their location, it goes back in the supply instead. This particular card you might actually want to place in locations that don't have puppy tokens yet, and make it so when those 3 puppy tokens will be placed on that location, they just go right back into the supply and burn out those, possibly putting those puppy tokens out, actions with the activates and such. So this card, in my opinion, is the worst card of the entire Fate deck in terms of dealing with it from the villain side. So if you draw this early and you can play it out, it is brutal. And, obviously she does have the tools to kind of get rid of it early. But like I said, got to sacrifice an ally. You'll have to find a poker. Hope to God they have the telephone. Stuff like that. Yeah. So keep that in mind with Anita and Roger. They are very good. So don't try to waste them if possible. Sergeant Tibs and Colonel, I find some of the weaker cards in the deck. Colonel specifically is you can move a hero around. So if the Karela player has the Vanquish kind of engine built with these guys having pokers and such, Colonel's ability of isn't super that great, because usually at the end of the day, if let's say Pongo is going to get vanquished, Colonel can move him over here. But even here, I can use a move action, move this guy over, still do whatever I need to do as long as he's got a poker on him, bada bing, bada boom. He's not that great. And if you're vanquishing often, his effect isn't probably going to come into play. Tibs isn't also, he's good when you're setting up to capture, but if you are starting to pile the tokens up, he's really only going to benefit if you're taking the tokens off of your primary, wherever Jasper is, and if you're stacking a bunch of tokens over there, that's going to be the primary place that he's going to be useful for. So not that great. Captain comes in more clutch than you think. Literally by just playing him and moving him over will actually halt your progress to capture and even vanquish him in the same turn, which is really solid. Nanny's also really nice, where you're literally going to have to think about, all right, she has to go away. Because when she's going to get played, she's going to get played to a place where you're going to want to activate crap. So that's also, she's also really good. Pongo. I love this card. The art on this card is also probably one of my favorite pieces of art in the game. It's just so great. Pongo is the beautiful counter card. He should be played to a location where the most puppies are and probably going to be captured at. So that way you basically have to force Jasper to essentially take him out if possible. Because you got to keep in mind, too, all these guys can be killed by any of the allies except for Perdita and Pongo. They're both 4. So that on its own, if you actually play Perdita or Pongo to Horus's location, that's also kind of a big deal. Because Horus, by default, won't be able to take him out. He will need a poker in order to do so. So, yeah. Now, reckless driving. What my theory is with reckless driving is that whenever the Roadster is out and is ready to start dumping puppies at locations, get rid of it. I found that when the opponent doesn't play reckless driving to get rid of the Roadster and does something else, when the Roadster starts doing what it needs to do and does it really well, holy crap, it's just going to be a monster. Literally go over here, move that over. It doesn't matter if there was a hero out in the realm. Let's say, for intensive purposes, Colonel was here, you moved here, moved the Roadster. There's a ton of puppy tokens over here. You, by playing Colonel or whatever heck card it was, Perdita stealing a puppy, Pongo stopping captures, whatever it may be, Roadster is really good. So reckless driving the Roadster first. Even if the telephone is out, I know a lot of you might be tempted to get rid of the recycling engine, but dang, if I have not seen the Roadster just be a monster out on the board, get rid of that thing as soon as possible. It is a monster. We're Labradors too is also a really good card. If they are focusing mainly on trying to put puppies out on the board early, I would actually play We're Labradors instead of playing a hero, because even though that they might keep their actions, they burnt their actions, and now they basically wasted 2. Because We're Labradors chooses a location and takes 2 puppy tokens off of it and returns it to the supply. So it's really good in that regard, where literally 2 actions, whether it was a card play or an activate, got wasted and got put out. So then they'll have to retake those actions. And then later, after you know that both of the copies of We're Labradors are gone, then you can be like, all right, it's safe to start playing heroes and start blocking the actions up. Because now, like I said, if they get over the hurdle of playing a bunch of puppy tokens out early, then the heroes don't even really matter. Yeah. Roadster definitely surprised me how good it is. It is incredibly bonkers good. I think everyone is sleeping on how good this card is. Don't sleep on it. It's super, super good. Super good. Flew the Coop is honestly the counter card towards the end game. Try not to use this early if you can. If your opponent is already capturing the puppies early game, you can immediately just slow them down by playing heroes at these locations. And then afterwards, then you can kind of like, if they start to capture more, maybe play the other Flew the Coop when it gets pulled. These are really meant for in the end game when they start capturing. That's what the card you should be playing. Now, you got to keep in mind, like I said, I honestly think the biggest strength of the Fate deck is the fact that by just playing a hero to these spots, that really clogs Karela's ability to do a lot of stuff, especially since her vanquishing game is very low. So I would really try to avoid maybe playing some of these effects and clog that stuff if you can, and then go for it. Like, early Roadster is not that big of a deal. Late game Roadster is scary. Same thing with early game Telephone. Even late game Telephone is not that bad. Really try to block the actions, make it so the puppy tokens don't get on the board in unfavorable ways. Anita and Roger is really good. Play them to a location that doesn't have any puppies on it yet, and just make it so puppies can't go there. Halting the ability to put puppies out will do you wonders. It will do you wonders. Don't worry about capturing these things unless the opponent just isn't playing right. Like I said, I've seen players early playing Karela, what they'll do is they'll capture the puppies early like this, but then you start getting this stuff covered, and even if they were able to capture 22, they're not going to be able to capture anymore. Yeah. Fluffy says the fact that the card is called Reckless Driving is a hint that Roadster is the best call. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Kronk, a cat, and a shadow could be other villains' allies combined. Don't mess with them. Yeah, I know. Seriously. It's funny. But yeah, her Fate deck is relatively straightforward on kind of how to use the cards and like the options for them, like playing them and how they work is really easy to kind of understand. It's more the fact of like, all right, you know, something like I said, even when a Karela is being slowed down, like the most effective thing to do up front is to stop her ability to put puppies out on the board, and then you can lace it up. After that, then you can start focusing on trying to halt the capturing as much as possible. Once you know that bridge has been crossed, because like I said, once puppy tokens are all over the place, there is no point in trying to stop the ability of putting the tokens out. You need to stop the ability to capture them at all cost. So yeah, there you go. That is Karela's Fate deck. Do we have any questions on any fading stuff with the Devil Woman herself? Was it Secret Lawyer, man? I feel ya. I am also that person in 4-player games, but being perfectly honest, that's honestly why I've really tried to ignore 4-player games in this game. I really do. Yeah, Cruella can feel a bit inevitable. All you can do is slow her down. That's really all you gotta do. Like, you have to slow down what her current objective is, which is either putting puppies out and setting them up for capture, or capturing the puppies and keeping or putting the captured puppies back out. You know, that's the thing. It's focused around those two different breakpoints, and you have to stop one. Once one of them gets overcome, you need to start going for the other one, because, like I said, she is a little bit of a momentum character, where once she gets one of the things set up, she can't be stopped at that point unless something horribly just goes wrong. Um, and then like, yeah, she once she gets her momentum, she's kind of good. She's in good shape. All right. I think that's it with Cruella De Vil. I hope this deep dive was useful. And I hope that you can start getting some wins with her. I definitely think the biggest thing I would say, take away from this, place the puppy tokens out. Focus on that. These guys are your priority. And do not be afraid to not play cards when you don't need to, especially when these guys aren't out and ready to go. Like I tell people all the time that, yes, it is a card game, the hand management game, and it does have to do with cards, but you don't always have to play cards. Sometimes not playing a card when you can is the best thing for you to do. And if you do that and just get rid of stuff and open up your hand for new options, she is a very good character. So there you go. Cruella De Vil.